out lots of times if I'm tired and everything. Oh, no, Mr. Bill, no. And then the minute I get out on the stage, say, I'm Mother Mary Ruth, I have such a good time.
In June 1987, Geraldine Page missed a Broadway performance for the first time in her career. When her son found her body that evening, he also discovered something else in her apartment. Hidden letters that revealed a dark Hollywood conspiracy spanning 30 years. Page had been blacklisted, not for her politics, but for something far more personal. Her voice shook when she finally told the truth about what really happened, and why she almost gave up acting forever. Geraldine Page was born on November 22, 1924, in Kirksville, Missouri. Her father, Dr. Leon Elwin Page, worked as an osteopathic doctor, and her mother, Edna Pearl Mays Page, kept their home steady and warm. Kirksville was a small town with fewer than 8,000 people at the time. It was known for its medical college, not for producing future stars. But even in that quiet place, Geraldine's early life was shaped by strong family values, discipline, and quiet ambition. The Great Depression made things harder for everyone around them, but the Page family managed to stay stable. That small-town life gave Geraldine a mix of strength and hope that stayed with her. When she was 5 in 1929, her family packed up and moved to Chicago. That move changed everything. The calm of Kirksville was left behind, and Geraldine found herself in the middle of a huge, noisy city full of music, art, and people from everywhere. Chicago was struggling through the Great Depression too, but it was also alive with energy. The Page family lived in Englewood, a working-class neighborhood where the arts were starting to grow. Geraldine's world became much bigger. She saw theaters, museums, and busy streets that opened her eyes to new dreams. At first, acting wasn't one of those dreams. Geraldine wanted to be a pianist or a painter. She spent hours at the piano, practicing until her fingers ached. When she wasn't playing music, she filled notebooks with drawings and watercolors. Her parents encouraged her. They believed music and art would help her in any path she chose. Acting didn't even cross her mind during those early years, but all that hard work with the piano and her paintbrush taught her discipline and patience. Those lessons would later help her become a great actress, even though she didn't know it yet. Her first taste of acting came at age 17. In 1941, she stepped onto a small stage at Englewood Methodist Church in a play called Excuse My Dust. It wasn't a big role. It wasn't a famous play. But that night, Geraldine felt something she had never felt before. The audience's energy, the thrill of performing, and the power of telling a story grabbed her in a way music and art never had. From that moment, she knew she wanted to act. That small church stage had given her a new dream. In 1942, she graduated from Englewood High School. The school was known for its strong academics and arts programs, and Geraldine had been deeply involved in both. She acted in plays, played music, and created art. Her teachers believed she was destined for great things beyond the Midwest. The world was at war, and life was uncertain, but Geraldine held on to her dreams. She set her sights on New York and the stages of Broadway. After school, Geraldine threw herself into summer stock theater. From 1945 to 1950, she acted in small theaters across the Midwest. It was hard, thankless work. Some weeks, she played 3 different roles in 3 different plays. The theaters were hot in summer, freezing in early spring, and often falling apart. She rehearsed all day and performed at night, with barely enough time to eat or sleep. Yet her talent began to shine through. Chicago critics started to notice her, even if her name wasn't at the top of the playbills. Those years tested her, but they also made her stronger. To survive, Geraldine worked odd jobs that drained her spirit. She checked hats at smoky clubs, guided theater-goers to their seats as an usher, folded clothes as a sales clerk, and even modeled lingerie, something seen as shameful in those days. She labored in factories until her hands were raw. These jobs kept her going, but also gave her a deep understanding of struggle. Later, she would use that understanding to bring truth to the characters she played. In 1950, Geraldine made the brave move to New York City. She had little more than her suitcase and a pile of rejection letters from failed auditions. The city was harsh and crowded, and competition was fierce. She lived in cramped apartments, shared space with other hopeful actors, and faced rejection after rejection. But she kept every rejection letter as a reminder of her determination. She believed in herself, even when no one else did. In New York, she studied with two of the greatest acting teachers of the time, Uta Hagen and Lee Strasberg. Uta Hagen taught her to chase emotional truth, and Lee Strasberg showed her how to dig deep into her soul for each role. These teachers helped shape her craft. In 1952, Geraldine Page stepped onto the stage of the small circle in the Square Theater in Greenwich Village. She played Alma Weinmiller in Tennessee Williams' Summer and Smoke. What made this moment so remarkable was that just 4 years earlier, the play had been a flop on Broadway, closing after only 102 performances. But when Page appeared in it, something magical happened. Her raw and deeply emotional performance stunned both critics and audiences. The production ran for 356 performances, an incredible achievement for off-Broadway at that time. Many said her acting was sheer magic, and her name became tied to a new chapter in American theater. This wasn't just a personal victory. It helped launch the off-Broadway movement, creating space for serious, innovative plays beyond the usual Broadway stage. Her performance didn't just win applause, it made history. Geraldine Page became the first actor ever to win the New York Drama Critics Award for a role in a non-Broadway production. At the time, Broadway was seen as the only place for real theater. Off-Broadway was looked down on, seen as a playground for amateurs. But Page's award forced people to see off-Broadway differently. Suddenly, it was a place where great art could happen. This win changed Page's life overnight. She signed a 7-year film contract with producer Charles K. Feldman. More importantly, it opened the door for other actors and productions to gain respect outside of Broadway. In January 1953, Page made her Broadway debut in Midsummer, a play by Vina Del Mar. The play itself was a failure. It didn't last long and was quickly forgotten. But Page's performance stood out. Critics praised her portrayal of Lily, a naive and hopeful heroine. Wolcott Gibbs of The New Yorker called her character possibly the noblest woman put on the stage in my generation, and said the role would have been unbearable in anyone else's hands. Even though the play failed, Page's talent shone through. Her career kept rising, and this debut marked the start of more than 30 years on Broadway, during which she earned 4 Tony nominations. But as her stage career soared, her film ambitions were crushed. After her Oscar-nominated film debut in Hondo in 1953, Geraldine Page should have become a major star in Hollywood. Instead, she was blacklisted. It wasn't because of anything she said or did, but because she had studied with Uta Hagen. Hagen was an acting teacher with leftist views who refused to cooperate with the House Un-American Activities Committee. Simply knowing Hagen was enough for Hollywood studios to turn their backs on Page. The blacklist didn't need proof or public accusations. It worked quietly. Studio heads just stopped calling, and Page's name disappeared from casting lists. No one told her directly. There was no hearing, no chance to defend herself. Her film career came to a standstill. This exile lasted 8 long years, from 1953 to 1961. These were the prime years of her career, when she was between 29 and 37. While actresses like Joanne Woodward and Kim Stanley were building their film legacies, Page was left out. She later said she felt invisible during these years. The loss was crushing. Not only did she miss out on work, but she also watched as her peers advanced, knowing she had the talent, but not the chance. The ban wasn't written down anywhere, so there was no way to challenge it. And the damage went beyond lost roles. The blacklist took away her sense of worth and belonging in the industry. The fear that fueled the blacklist came not just from government committees, but from within Hollywood itself. Geraldine Page saw this up close. Ward Bond, a well-known actor and friend of John Wayne, became a kind of enforcer. Bond was part of a group called the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals. He questioned colleagues about their politics and pushed studios to fire those he found suspicious. His presence on film sets created tension and fear. Page lived and worked in this environment where a careless word or the wrong friend could end a career. The paranoia was everywhere. Even private conversations could be twisted into evidence against you. Cut off from films, Page turned to Broadway and television. The stage became her refuge. Between 1953 and 1961, she gave some of her greatest performances in plays like The Immoralist in 1954, The Rainmaker, and Sweet Bird of Youth in 1959. She earned praise and awards, but she knew that the big, well-paid, and visible work in Hollywood was closed to her. Television offered some roles, but they didn't have the same impact or security as film. Still, Page refused to give up. She kept acting, kept excelling, and built a respected stage career. But she couldn't forget what she'd lost. Every success reminded her that she should have had a place in Hollywood too. That place was taken from her, not because she lacked talent, but because of fear and politics. When Page finally returned to film in Summer and Smoke in 1961, she was 37. The roles that might have made her a screen legend were gone. The years she should have spent building her film career had been stolen. But her resilience, her talent, and her love for acting never faded. In 1959, Geraldine Page stunned Broadway with her unforgettable performance as Princess Cosmonopolis in Sweet Bird of Youth. The play was written by Tennessee Williams and directed by Elia Kazan. It opened on March 10th at the Martin Beck Theater and became a sensation. It ran for over a year with 375 performances. That was a huge success for a new play at the time. Page's portrayal of the desperate and fading Hollywood star was so powerful that she received her first Tony Award nomination for Best Actress. Critics praised her deeply emotional and raw performance. The play earned 3 Tony nominations, but it was Page who truly left audiences speechless. Her chemistry with Paul Newman, who played opposite her, became legendary. People still talk about the magic they created together on stage. When the play was turned into a film in 1962, Page played the role again. She earned an Oscar nomination and won a Golden Globe, proving she was one of the best at bringing Tennessee Williams's characters to life. What made her Princess Cosmonopolis so real was the secret inspiration behind it. Page based the character on Norma Talmadge, a famous silent film star from the 1910s and 1920s. Talmadge had been one of the biggest stars of her time, earning up to $1 million a year. But when sound came to film, her career faded. Page admired Talmadge's soft, open-hearted nature and her vulnerable spirit. She believed these qualities were key to showing the princess's tragic story. By channeling Talmadge's rise and fall, Page gave the princess a heartbreaking honesty. Her performance reminded people how fleeting fame can be, and how fragile those who chase it often are. Page's work with Tennessee Williams became one of the most important partnerships in American theater. It started in 1952 when she played Alma Wine Miller in a revival of Summer and Smoke. That role made critics take notice. When she did the film version, she was nominated for an Oscar. Williams called her the most disciplined and dedicated actress he had ever worked with. From 1959 to 1963, Page was his first choice for his most difficult and wounded female characters. She played women filled with desire, regret, and deep emotional scars. Williams trusted her so much that he even asked for her advice on his characters. Their connection brought out some of the most moving performances ever seen on the American stage. In the early 1960s, Page took another bold step. With Rip Torn, who would later become her husband, she founded the Stock Theater Repertory Company. They set it up near Lake Zurich, outside Chicago. It was not just about putting on plays. It was about creating a place where actors could take risks and do meaningful work. They ran the company for 4 seasons. Page worked tirelessly, giving her own money when needed and taking on many jobs to keep things running. The company gave young actors a chance to learn and shine. It also gave Page room to grow as an artist, trying new roles and directing. This adventure strengthened her bond with Torn and showed their deep belief in the power of theater to change lives. Geraldine Page's personal life was as dramatic as the roles she played. In 1954, when she was 29, she married Alexander Schneider, a famous violinist who was 45 at the time. That 16-year age gap caught a lot of attention in New York's arts circles. Schneider had already lived through intense moments, including surviving tetanus as a child and becoming a key figure in the Budapest String Quartet. Their wedding took place on May 13th in Tarrytown, New York. But their marriage didn't last. Just 3 years later, in 1957, they divorced. People whispered about how their busy artistic lives may have clashed, but no one knew the full story. That short marriage marked the start of Page's stormy love life. Her next marriage would draw even more eyes. On September 8, 1963, Geraldine married actor Rip Torn in Pinal, Arizona. They chose that remote spot to stay out of the spotlight. Their romance had started in 1959, during a Broadway run of Sweet Bird of Youth. They brought that chemistry to the screen in the 1962 film version. Torn was 6 years younger than Page, and their relationship quickly became a hot topic in the theater world. They didn't just share the stage, they built a life together, co-founding the Sanctuary Theater Workshop. They had 3 children, including Angelica Page, who followed in her mother's footsteps. Their New York townhouse even had a doorbell that read, "Torn Page," a playful but fitting sign for their fiery partnership. They stayed married until Page's death in 1987, though their time together was anything but smooth. By the early 1980s, the cracks showed. Rip Torn had started an affair with Amy Wright, an actress 19 years younger. He met Wright in 1976 during an off-Broadway production of Hamlet, where he played Hamlet and she played Ophelia. Soon, he was splitting his life between Geraldine and Amy. Everyone knew. Wright even admitted later that both women were jealous, though for different reasons. But Page refused to give Torn a divorce. In 1983, Torn and Wright had a child together. Page, however, stood firm. When a reporter asked about it, she said, "Of course, Rip and I are still married. We've been married for years. We're staying married. What's the big fuss?" Her defiance shocked many. People wondered if she was driven by pride, a need for stability, or both. But she never wavered. The marriage stayed intact until the end. One of the strangest moments came in 1977. Page and Wright actually appeared on stage together in The Stronger, a play about 2 women locked in a silent fight. Torn directed it. Everyone backstage felt the tension. Wright later said, Page only did it for Torn's sake. Both women suffered through the production, their jealousy adding fuel to every scene. It was a real-life drama playing out in front of the audience. But Page's dedication to her work never faltered, even with her private pain so exposed. Between 1953 and 1984, Geraldine Page built one of the most remarkable and heartbreaking records in Hollywood. She earned 7 Oscar nominations without a single win. It started with Hondo and then Summer and Smoke in 1961. In 1962, she was nominated for Sweet Bird of Youth. The pattern continued with You're a Big Boy. Now in 1966, Pete and Tilly in 1972, Interiors in 1978, and The Pope of Greenwich Village in 1984. Each role was completely different, showing how wide her talent really was. She played fragile characters like Alma Weinmiller in Summer and Smoke, fiery ones like Alexandra Del Lago in Sweet Bird of Youth, and deeply troubled souls like Eve in Interiors. But no matter how much critics praised her or how much her peers respected her, the Oscar kept slipping through her fingers. By the time she got that 7th nomination, people in Hollywood couldn't stop talking about her losing streak. She had now passed Deborah Kerr and Thelma Ritter, who both had 6 nominations without wins. Geraldine was the first woman ever to reach 7 without a victory. The media had a field day, calling her the Susan Lucci of the Oscars, comparing her to the soap star famous for losing awards year after year. The attention was intense, and it seemed like everyone was waiting to see how long this unlucky run would go on. Geraldine even joked about it herself. Before the 1985 Oscars, she told People magazine that if she lost again, at least she'd be the champion of losing. She said it with a smile, but the weight of it all was clear. What the public didn't always see was how much Geraldine believed in her own work. Years later, she admitted that deep down she thought she should have won every single time. She said, "If you don't tell anybody, I thought I should have won every time. I'm my biggest fan." It wasn't arrogance. It was the quiet belief of an artist who gave everything to her roles. That belief kept her going through all the heartbreak and the headlines. She kept taking on challenging parts, kept pushing herself, and kept delivering performances that people still remember today. The press wasn't kind during those years. They labeled her the biggest Oscar loser in headline after headline. On Oscar night, the cameras would linger on her face when someone else's name was called. Articles, TV specials, and montages would mention her streak, sometimes with sympathy, but often with a tone of mockery. Each nomination brought hope, but also the risk of more public embarrassment. When she turned 61, she earned her 8th nomination for playing Carrie Watts in The Trip to Bountiful. That role showed everything she could do as an actress. Carrie Watts was an old woman longing for one last trip to her childhood home. Geraldine brought such honesty and emotion to the part that both audiences and critics were deeply moved. Her first nomination had come way back in 1953 for Hondo. That meant she had waited more than 30 years for this chance. Many believed it was long overdue. Winning at that age was not just about talent. It was also a victory over Hollywood's unfair treatment of older women. The 1986 Oscars became unforgettable when F. Murray Abraham opened the envelope and announced Geraldine's name. But he didn't stop there. He called her the greatest actress in the English language. The audience was stunned by those powerful words. As she walked to the stage, Abraham bowed deeply to her, like she was royalty. No one had seen anything like that at the Oscars before. His words and his gesture made that moment part of Oscar history. When her name was called, the entire audience stood up in a rare standing ovation. People clapped, cheered, and some even cried. This wasn't polite applause. It was a tribute to her incredible career and all the years she had waited. The applause lasted so long that it drowned out the orchestra's music. But no one minded. It was clear that this night belonged to Geraldine Page. At the podium, she was shaking. Her voice trembled. She held her Oscar tightly and tried to speak through her tears. She thanked the Mirror Repertory Company, which she had helped create. She thanked Horton Foote, who wrote The Trip to Bountiful. Her words came from the heart. They weren't polished or rehearsed. She talked about how hard it was to keep going in the world of acting. She spoke about how much the support of her friends and family had meant. That short speech touched everyone who heard it. The press quoted it everywhere. Actors today still remember it as one of the most honest moments in Oscar history. When she finished, something magical happened. The audience stood up again. A second standing ovation filled the room. It was even more powerful than the first. People weren't just clapping for a performance. They were celebrating her whole life's work. That second ovation made the night even more special. It showed how deeply loved and respected Geraldine Page was. Her win became one of the most emotional and talked about moments the Oscars had ever seen. In the spring of 1987, Geraldine Page was shining brighter than ever on Broadway. She took on the role of Madame Arcati in Blithe Spirit at the Neil Simon Theatre. The production opened on March 31, 1987. The cast was filled with stars like Richard Chamberlain, Blythe Danner, and Judith Ivey. But it was Geraldine who stole every scene. The show ran for 104 performances and became the talk of the town. Her performance was so powerful that she earned her 8th Tony Award nomination for Best Actress. This was her final nomination. The timing made everything feel even more special. Geraldine had finally won her first Oscar just the year before. She brought unmatched energy to the stage every night. Her portrayal of the eccentric medium was funny, sharp, and unforgettable. She made audiences laugh and feel. Even though the entire cast was strong, it was Geraldine's presence that kept people coming back. Then came the shock that no one saw coming. On June 13, 1987, Geraldine didn't show up for either the matinee or evening performance. This was completely out of character. Her son, Anthony Torn, went to her apartment in Lower Manhattan to check on her. He found that she had passed away. She was only 62 years old. The cause was an apparent heart attack. The news spread through Broadway like wildfire. That very evening, her castmates learned of her death during a gathering that had already been planned. Police confirmed it was natural causes. But the suddenness of it all left her friends, colleagues, and fans heartbroken. A memorial service was held at the Neil Simon Theatre, the very place where she had given so many brilliant performances. Her passing was not just a loss for her family, but for the entire theater world. What made her death so painful was that she was still in her prime. She had finally won her long-deserved Oscar for The Trip to Bountiful in 1986, after 7 earlier nominations. Her acceptance speech was honest and funny. She said, "If you don't tell anybody, I thought I should have won every time. I'm my biggest fan." That moment of triumph came just a year before her life was cut short. Only 6 days after the Tony Awards in 1987, she was gone. Yet, she had kept going, performing with the same passion and strength that had defined her career. Her death was a reminder of how unpredictable life can be, and how much she had given to her art until the very end. What few people knew was that Geraldine had been struggling with serious health issues in her final months. She suffered from kidney disease and high blood pressure. But she kept this hidden from the public. Only her closest family and friends knew the truth. Despite the toll on her body, she never let it affect her work. Night after night, she took the stage in a role that demanded both physical energy and emotional depth. The audience had no idea of the battle she was fighting. Her dedication was extraordinary. After her death, when the truth came out, it made her final performances even more moving.